So listen, this next phase of our life is about to feel like the Twilight Zone, man. Where we're headed, it's just gonna seem possibly like it's not even real, right? And if you see some of the things and you hear about some of the things that Elon is doing with SpaceX and different things like that, it's two videos I want to check out. One with SpaceX and them doing a spacewalk, and then another one where scientists seem to be close to reverse aging. Like, yeah, I know. And then to top it off, bro, I was listening to an interview on CNBC, and they were talking about Elon and how he could soon be a trillionaire, bro. Twilight Zone. I feel like we're getting into this era, man. So we're going to check out this first video with SpaceX.
We start in space and history being made more than half a century after Neil Armstrong became the first person to walk on the moon. Well, today, the billionaire businessman Jared Isaacman became the first non-professional astronaut to walk in space.
Single-handed mobility demonstration.
But his first words as he stepped outside the Resilient spacecraft were "beautiful world." He used the first privately funded spacewalk to do mobility tests on the new type of spacesuit that will be at the forefront of the next generation of space exploration.
Now, yes, I agree, y'all. It don't look real. But how am I to know what it looks like? I'm saying that just because I know some people are going to get on here and troll and be like, see, that don't even look real. It just looked like it's taking place in some type of studio, the black background, everything like that. I get it. But, like, look at this, though, bro. For those of us who are believing it's real, look at this. Like, what they're doing is just insane.
Our science correspondent, Palab Ghosh, has the story.
Back at home, we all have a lot of work to do, but from here, Earth sure looks like a perfect world.
Historic words for an historic moment. Out comes the first private sector astronaut to walk in space. Silhouetted in Earth's orbit, billionaire Jared Isaacman paid millions of dollars for this experience. Earlier, he was suiting up, as were the three other crew members. The capsule has no airlock, so the entire spacecraft is in the vacuum of space once the doors opened.
Port 1 closed.
Port 2 closed. SpaceX Dragon is ready for seat pressurization.
Then the all-important checks to make sure that the spacesuits don't leak. They've been upgraded for the spacewalk, stronger and more flexible, and the helmets have a heads-up display, so they see how well their bodies are coping. Then the air is taken out of the capsule, so the pressure inside matches what's outside. The hatch opens, and Isaacman exits the spacecraft. There's not much to do outside, apart from testing the suit, so he floats around and enjoys the view before returning to the capsule. Then,
Wonder why his arm is like that. He doesn't have a personal thing like going on. If that's the case, then okay. But if there's nothing physically wrong with him and he doesn't walk around like that all the time, what is making his arm do that and sit like, it's almost like he's doing like a little snake or something like that, but it's like it can't move and he's just holding it there while he's trying to come up.
Then it's the turn of mission specialist Sarah Gillis. She's trained for this moment for 2 years.
We really are hoping to bring back this knowledge for the SpaceX team of how does the suit perform? What did we, really nail in the operation and in the training on the ground? Because this is a brand new training program for our SpaceX team. So I think we're going to be doing a lot of data finding, fact finding that we can then bring back to make future spacewalk operations or, future suit design even better.
It was 60 years ago that Alexei Leonov became the first person to walk in space. Since then, it's only been astronauts working for government space agencies to have done this. Until now, this is the first ever private sector crew to have walked in space.
Companies like SpaceX have done some things very differently. They've built lots and lots of hardware and they've done lots of testing, and we've all seen, amazing explosions. We've seen things go bang. But each time they've learned from that process. This could be a significant step. It'd be really exciting to see what happens with the next Polaris mission. So there are 2 more to come, we believe. And, what are going to be the milestones for that are going to be addressed? I can't wait.
Well, he gonna have to come off the price before I'll ever be able to make it up there. You heard him. That dude paid a couple million, several million to get up there and do that. There's no way I'll get the opportunity then.
The historic spacewalk now over, the crew's attention turns to carrying out experiments before beginning their journey home in 2 days' time. Talab Ghosh, BBC News.
Well, let's head to Cardiff and speak to our science correspondent, Georgina Renard, who was watching all those pictures. It was absolutely spellbinding, wasn't it, watching that? And it seemed to go like clockwork.
Yes, it was, absolutely. We had a very tense hour watching those pictures. We were watching them inside the capsule, and I did think it looks very small and tight in there. And then, of course, we saw Jared Isaacman emerging up through that space and coming out. He sort of moved his limbs, his hands and feet to test the suit. He went back in. It went very quickly. And then his colleague, Sarah Gillis, she did the same thing. We did have some feelings of nervousness. This was a very risky and quite dangerous operation, but of course the mission was successful. They've pulled it off, and I'm sure Jared Isaacman will be very pleased with its success. He's funded this. It's we don't know the exact cost, but just one seat on a SpaceX flight is considered to be $55 billion. So he'll be really pleased that this was a success. And also he has seen that amazing view of Earth from just outside the Dragon capsule.
We're seeing that.
No, I know she said that wrong. She misplaced the decimal point. Had to be. Had to be. Had to be. Had to be. Like, yeah. She gotta come back and give us the right numbers. That can't be the right numbers. I won't believe it.
Those pictures now, as you were talking to us, we've now gone inside the capsule, but you were talking about the potential dangers, the potential jeopardy. There were many of those moments, all of them passed off with no event. Take us through the next stages now.
So this is part of a 6-day mission. The spacecraft launched on Tuesday. This is the 3rd day. It's got 2 more days up in space. It will, tomorrow, we think it will broadcast some sort of message. On Saturday, it will begin its descent from the high orbit, and then it will splash down into the ocean off the coast of Florida, where it'll be picked up. But of course, they'll be celebrating this success, learning from it, and I don't think this will be the last of the billionaires we see do a spacewalk, and they'll be hoping that someday the rest of us who don't quite have that much money may have the opportunity to do our own spacewalks, but that is probably still a long way off.
Georgina, thanks very much. Well, let's stay with this. Let's speak to the space scientist, Dr. Hina Khan. Doctor, welcome here to the programme. I'm going to take us straight back to the pictures because they were quite incredible. You were watching them live as they happened. It's so interesting, isn't it? Because astronauts will spend years in the training, but that moment when they emerge, they see that view of the Earth, it is an extraordinary moment that takes the breath away from everyone who's done it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, I'm not one of those people that have done this, but having seen the pictures, I can imagine what it could feel like and what it might be like to have that feeling to be out in the vastness of space. And whilst this has been the privilege of a very select few, I think what's important to understand is that what's happened in order for them to get here, the development, the technology taken to build these new suits and experience that, I think it's a collaborative effort for lots of different people, hundreds of thousands of people who have worked on this moment to get these 4 individuals into this situation.
Tell me more then about the significance. The suits, that'll be part of what we need, the next generation of space exploration, those missions to Mars and elsewhere. But also, how do you see the significance of this, the first commercial spacewalk?
Yeah, no, I think there's 2 really interesting things. I think the first, like you said, this is paving the way for what we all know is the return to the moon, the return, moving on to the Mars and kind of off-planet habitats. And that's a clear objective for lots of different government agencies, NASA, the European Space Agencies, as well as the commercial spaceflight environment. So the testing of this, I think, is really exciting and making sure that, as you said, it's been a success. But the broader context here within the commercial space environment is it's allowing entities, commercial industry bodies to be part of this journey. We talked a little bit earlier, one of your correspondents mentioned that, commercial satellite development is already something that's happening across the board. So where it was the domain of state-run organizations, now individual industries and companies can be building satellites and taking that technology to space. This is another step in that, where now, space flight as well as space suit, and then all the detail that is required to have individuals or people within the space domain, it's opening that up to a much broader environment.
I'll come back to that point in a moment, but
like us being able to see something like this up close and personal, man, should let y'all know where we headed, bro. And it's about to get crazy and wild out here. Just the possibilities, the endless possibilities. Them saying we could be living on Mars, I really believe it now. Seeing what we seeing, I truly believe that now. Like, they're gonna have like a whole civilization before you know it on Mars, living and thriving. And we're going to be able to watch it. It's going to be like a Big Brother house where they got cameras everywhere and we can just tap in and look. I'm serious, bro.
So many extraordinary stories involved in what we've seen today. Sarah Gillis, who we saw make that second spacewalk, she started at SpaceX as an intern, didn't she? And here she is doing a spacewalk like this, making history.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's what's really exciting here, is that whilst, yes, there's these few individuals with a lot of money who are able to furnish these things, it's actually opening the door for young people and for people who are interested in the space sector to be able to have that opportunity. SpaceX is a commercial organization. It's a large company which has developed its own capability. And we have companies of a size here in the UK as well as across other Europe and elsewhere. So you can imagine that young people and even with people within the sector are seeing there's opportunity here for us to be part of something much bigger.
Yes.
I'm not saying that everybody gets to be in space. But...
No, and everything about this is much bigger. We saw at SpaceX HQ them all breaking into applause when that hatch opened and when the first spacewalk actually took place, those first few steps. It sort of underlines the point, the massive amount of work that goes into something like this. And you've got NASA with their trips back to the moon. Your assessment, finally, of the pace of technological advance we're seeing now?
So I think that's it. I mean, when we were part of, it was the domain of government agencies and NASA and the likes, there was a direction of travel that was being dictated by those organizations. Now bringing it out into the commercial domain, there's a highly competitive environment, and competitiveness does drive innovation. So it allows organizations to think about, right, what is the next opportunity that we can help push forward on this. And so being able to, like you said, in the last 60 years, be able to get to this point from a commercial standpoint, I think is really, really critical. And it allows that opportunity to grow much broader than just the select few organizations that might have done this in the past. So it's an exciting time, I think, for the sector as a whole.
It really is. Thank you for taking time to speak to us on today's program, Dr. Hina Khan. Thank you very much.
All right, so here it is. You probably thought I was joking, right? I'm playing around. I know I play around a lot, but I'm serious about this, fam. Like, scientists claim they are closer than ever to reverse aging.
Imagine if you could turn back the clock to reverse aging. Get rid of wrinkles, gray hair, or see 2020 again. Well, there's a handful of startups trying to do exactly that. And billionaires are pouring money into this, hoping the tech will be developed before it's too late for them.
These tech billionaires, they like their lives a lot and they just don't want to give it up. So they're driving a lot of this.
Scientists are trying to manipulate human cells to rejuvenate your body. It's a technique they're calling cellular reprogramming, and it could be reality in just a couple of years.
I'm unapologetically afraid of dying. If you cure aging and people have the mortality of young adults, then they would live thousands of years.
But how does this work? Should we worry about side effects? And how close are we really to cheating death?
Some people won't care. I would absolutely care about side effects, bro. Anytime I hear about a new drug they're giving you in doctor's office or prescribing you or whatever like that, I always wait to listen for the side effects. And a lot of times, for the amount of things that thing is helping you, it's so much other things that it's making worse for you.
I'm Hillary Brick, and I'm a health correspondent here at Business Insider.
Aging is this inevitable and progressive process of loss of viability and increase in vulnerability. So once you reach about age 30, your chance of dying doubles roughly every 8 years. And you see that across populations, from poor countries to wealthy countries, it doesn't matter. That's very consistent across populations.
But to understand aging, we need to think about how it all starts, because we start out in a much different, more flexible shape. Picture a fertilized egg, the single cell where we all begin. That cell could become anything. It's what we call a stem cell. Stem cells are versatile and can turn into any type of cell your body needs. And then as they develop, the stem cells become more specialized. Scientists might say they're differentiated cells, but really it's kind of like they're getting job titles, like a skin cell, or a brain cell, or a hair cell. Our stem cells are like our body's built-in rejuvenation system. They're constantly turning over, making new stuff for us, keeping our body going with new hair, new skin, fresh neurons.
These stem cells are required for regenerating tissue because our tissues, our cells die and have to be constantly replaced. That's why, when you fall down and get a bruise, it quickly repairs itself.
As we age, the number of these stem cells decreases and their efficiency declines. So our body has a harder time repairing and replacing tissues, and this leads to slower healing and more signs of aging all over.
Aging is really an accumulation of changes. A lot of it is chemical damage, and eventually things start becoming dysfunctional.
That buildup of damage over time as we age creates problems. Some scientists think of it kind of like a photocopier or something, like where the more copies you make, the more worn out it gets and the more little glitches and errors it has on it. This damage in our DNA is kind of like glitches in our human programming. Over time, the errors cause issues because our bodies use that code to make the proteins that sustain our whole life and fight infections and thrive as people. When the instructions for our cells are damaged, they stop working properly, which is part of what happens during aging. So when scientists talk about reprogramming, what do they mean?
So this idea of reprogramming is, could we take cells that are fully differentiated, like skin cell or muscle cell or whatever, and program them to go backwards to the stem cell that originally generated them? Or even, make them somehow biologically younger.
The idea of reprogramming your cells to slow down aging is not that new. In 2012, a Japanese scientist and former surgeon named Shinya Yamanaka won the Nobel Prize for his discovery. Yamanaka figured out that you can use 4 special genes to reset your cells back into stem cells. And that set of 4 genes are called the Yamanaka factors. They contain instructions that can reset a cell back to an undifferentiated state, making it like new again, essentially rewriting the cell's program and guiding it back to a more flexible, stem-like state. This was a big deal for aging science. These newly reset cells, known as induced pluripotent stem cells, can then turn into any type of cell you need and could potentially be used to grow new tissues or organs, like younger skin or a new heart. Typically, when researchers do cellular reprogramming in the lab, they use an inactivated virus to inject the Yamanaka factors. It's pretty much the same technique they use when you get a vaccine.
So you essentially have a virus, and what this virus does is that it has those 4 factors, and it transports them to the cells, and they have to be regulated, so you don't want too much of it, not too little, so you have to get...
See, that's my thing. Like, what's stopping you from aging too far back? Like, going too far back? Like, to infancy stage or toddler stage? What stops it from doing that, right? And then my other question is, I'm sitting here listening to them, because y'all know this is pretty much a gateway. If they're going to reverse aging, then eventually what's the next step after that? Oh, I bet we can bring somebody back to life. See, when they start playing those pet cemetery games, I don't know if I'm going to want to be around to participate, bro. I don't think so. I don't see it.
Get it right, but at least in animal models, this is possible to do now.
In 2006, Yamanaka showed this can be done in mice. Then in 2007, the next year, he started on human cells, first with skin. And his experiment was quite successful. What scientists and some startups are trying to do now is to partially reprogram some cells so they act younger, but don't go all the way back to being an embryonic stem cell again.
It retains its identity. It remains a liver cell or a brain cell or a skin cell, but it's rejuvenated. And so that has a lot of potential, because if you can rejuvenate cells without them losing their identity, that's what you want.
But even if these kinds of treatments become available, it wouldn't be like an 80-year-old can suddenly turn 20 again. Maybe it could be rewinding that receding hairline, ditching arthritis, regenerating heart muscle after a heart attack, or healing neurons in your retina so you can see better as you age.
I personally would love it if they could regenerate cartilage in my joints, at my age. That would be great. And also, if while they're at it, they could also regenerate hair, so that would be a multi-billion-dollar discovery if you could safely regenerate hair in bald men, okay?
There are even loftier goals like curing Parkinson's, regrowing parts of the brain, or rejuvenating your entire body.
If you have a young brain, it doesn't develop Alzheimer's or dementia anymore. So if you can turn your brain young, you will make you resilient to diseases. Maybe even you will treat and cure diseases, we don't know. So that is the promise of the field, is that if you make your organs younger, they'll be more resilient to diseases.
Now, most of these ideas are in the testing and research stage and not available as treatments just yet. But some scientists are close. I chatted with Johnny Heward, who's restoring joint cartilage for elite athletes using their own stem cells.
We take your bone marrow that contains stem cells and we re-inject that into your knee.
He's also experimenting with one form of cellular reprogramming using so-called epigenetic drugs, which can change the way our genes behave, in some cases, making them act younger again.
We have used cells from old people. They came in, we took the cells, came in the lab, looked at their epigenetic expression was going down, used epigenetic drug to bring this back up, and the cells look younger.
So would you say that that's a form of cellular reprogramming then, what you're doing with those patients?
Yes, it is a form of cellular reprogramming, because what I did is I harvest stem cells from you, take drugs to regulate your epigenetic expression, and make those cells younger, so I rejuvenate your cells.
But so far, this treatment is just lab work. It would eventually require FDA approval to put the reprogrammed cells back into people's bodies.
I'm not saying that, this thing will never be approved 3 years from now, but it's not approved today.
But the potential of this technology has sparked visionary ideas about the future.
I imagine a future where children or babies, even before they're born, they're engineered not to age, or at least engineered to be resistant to diseases like Alzheimer's disease. If you cure aging and people have the mortality of young adults, then they would live thousands of years. You could still die, of course, but you wouldn't have this exponential increase in mortality.
Recently, we've seen an explosion of research into this area, and money is flocking into cellular reprogramming and other longevity.
Yeah, but things like this always prevents a problem that we never foresee. And it isn't until we're already in it that then the problem arises and we can't turn or go back. We're already here and got to deal with it now, and it's catastrophic. So that's the part of me that is just like completely nervous, because we can't see it right now. We're just so focused on what's in front of us and the or the reverse aging that's in front of us. The possibility of being able to do it is so close. That's all we see. So we can't see beyond that of what's on the rise and going to be a direct result of that. So that's something I'm thinking about.
Treatments. Jeff Bezos, for example, is an investor in Altos Labs. Altos is a pretty secretive startup based in California that has recruited some of the most elite aging scientists in the world. The company has at least $3 billion in funding. Another big deal longevity scientist is Harvard professor David Sinclair. He's behind a bunch of different longevity companies, but he has experimented with cellular reprogramming already on mice and monkeys, and he's hoping to do people next. For example, he conducted an experiment with 2 mice from the same litter, same DNA. They're like twins, except one is biologically older now because it's had its DNA manipulated to act older, mimicking the stress that a body goes through as it ages. Then, Sinclair's team says they use cellular reprogramming to restore the old mouse's organs back to a more youthful state. For example, they found that they could safely reverse age-related blindness and rejuvenate the kidneys and the muscle in the mouse. Sinclair started a private company called Life Biosciences. It's raised at least $175 million so far. They're gunning to get this technology into people's eyeballs and cure age-related blindness. He says the eye injection will be ready soon, maybe within a year or two, but it remains to be seen how quickly it can actually move from labs into clinics. And there are other people you may know of who are investing in cellular reprogramming too.
You really think what it's like if
Sam Altman, the billionaire behind ChatGPT, is also gunning for cellular reprogramming. He's poured $180 million into his longevity startup, Retro Biosciences. I interviewed the CEO of Retro Biosciences, and he told me they're trying a slightly different approach to cellular reprogramming, take the cells out of someone's body, then reprogram them and pop them back in. He thinks it might be safer that way.
The field is maturing because people and investors and rich folks think that there's going to be commercial outputs in it, that they'll be able to make money out of it. That means that we're going to be able to have a product from the field, which is what I want.
People love to hear that aging is going to be solved and we're all going to live healthily for a very long time. But the reality is biology is kind of complicated. Tweak a gene here, insert a new program there, and you'll likely kick off multiple other processes in the body, including some that could be harmful and may not be immediately obvious either.
Mice have benefited from this kind of reprogramming. But to go from there to ask, can we now start using this in humans? It's a long stretch. And the reason is that we would want to make sure that over decades, it's not going to increase the risk of cancer. What's the point of living an extra 10 years if it's going to cause cancer, increase the risk of cancer before that?
The point Ramakrishnan raises here is important. In the early days of using Yamanaka's reprogramming technique, scientists often saw that cells they created could form teratomas, which are a type of tumor. This happened because 2 of the 4 genes used in the reprogramming process are oncogenes. Oncogenes are genes that can divide indefinitely, and that poses a cancer risk.
Always keep in mind that an immortal cell is a cancer cell. So the big danger of partial reprogramming and cellular rejuvenation and reprogramming itself is cancer. So we actually know from studies in mice that if you reprogram the cells a lot, in a mouse they become cancer. And obviously you don't want that. So there's this balance you have to achieve. You want to do it in a safe way that allows you to rejuvenate cells without turning them into cancer.
There's also a chance that continuously expressing these Yamanaka factors could lead to liver failure or make your intestines shut down. And there may be other toxic effects we haven't even considered yet. I think for several years now, we've seen the Silicon Valley billionaires trying to go after the medical field and pretty limited success. One of the most stunning and memorable failures in recent memory was probably the blood testing company Theranos, which ended up basically being a total sham.
How are you, Jack?
These tech entrepreneurs, CEOs, business people, and billionaires have all been really successful in the world of computing, technology, and it seems like they're trying to take this very same technological approach to what are very complex, poorly understood biological problems. So it remains to be seen if you can reprogram a person like you would a computer. But it's an idea that's attracting a lot of money and a lot of scientists.
I think it's wonderful that there is more activity, there's more interest, and there's more investment in the field. It's just so that there's more potential. Curing aging would be a monumental achievement, and it would be a huge change in medicine, in healthcare, in society. And I think that would be magnificent and a huge triumph of civilization.